The $15,000 custom sofa I had just bought was gone. In its place sat a ripped, filthy couch, dragged in from my sister's crumbling bungalow. My mother sat on her stolen prize as if it were her birthright, convinced I would stay silent and forgive them like always. However, this time was different. I simply dialed a single number on my phone and watched my entire family collapse, piece by piece. My name is Catherine Parker. I am 34 years old, and on paper, I am a success story. I live in Brookstone, a mid-sized American city that sits somewhere between industrial grit and suburban sprawl, the kind of place where old brick factories are slowly being converted into overpriced lofts. I run my own interior design studio called Canvas and Key Design. I have a blog, Parker at Home, which recently crossed 20,000 followers. I spend my days curating lives for other people, selecting the perfect shade of eggshell paint to soothe a nervous new mother, or finding the exact right mid-century armchair to make a bachelor feel sophisticated. I build sanctuaries. I create boundaries with drywall and velvet. Yet for the first 3 decades of my life, I did not know what a boundary was. I was born into a family of 4, but looking back, I realized I grew up as a tenant who paid full rent. There was my mother, Diane, a woman who wielded guilt like a surgeon wields a scalpel. There was my father, Robert, a man who had perfected the art of becoming invisible in his own living room to avoid conflict. And then there was Lily. Lily is 3 years younger than me. In the narrative my mother spun from the day my sister was born, Lily was the fragile flower, the one who needed extra water, extra light, and extra protection. I, conversely, was the weed that could grow through concrete. I was the sturdy one. The older sister, the one who did not need things because I was capable of surviving without them. This dynamic was not subtle. It was the foundation of our entire existence. I remember being 16 years old. It was the spring before my junior prom. I had spent 6 months working weekends at a greasy spoon diner on the edge of town, smelling permanently of old fryer oil and maple syrup. I saved every single dime, stuffing the cash into a hollowed-out biology textbook on my shelf. I had $300, which in those days felt like a fortune. I bought a dress. It was emerald green taffeta, shimmering and beautiful. The first thing I had ever owned that felt exclusively mine. 2 days before the dance, I came home to find the dress gone from my closet. I walked downstairs, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs, and found Lily standing in the living room. She was wearing my dress. The bodice was slightly too loose on her, but she was twirling, laughing as the fabric caught the light. My mother stood there, clapping her hands together, beaming. When I protested, when I felt the hot sting of tears pricking my eyes and demanded she take it off, the air in the room shifted instantly. Diane turned to me, her smile vanishing into a look of profound disappointment. Lily needs it more. Catherine, she said, her voice dropping to that reasonable, lecturing tone I would come to loathe. Her boyfriend just broke up with her. She needs a pick-me-up. You are strong. You can find something else to wear. You are the big sister. Be the bigger person. I ended up wearing an old skirt and a blouse I borrowed from a neighbor. Lily went to my prom in my dress, spilled punch on the hem, and never offered to clean it. That was the lesson I learned at 16. My hard work was simply a resource for Lily's happiness. It only got worse when adulthood arrived. When I was accepted into the state university, I sat my parents down at the kitchen table with my acceptance letter. My father looked at his hands. My mother looked at the wall. "We think it is best if you handle this yourself," Diane said. "It will teach you responsibility. We just do not have the funds right now." I accepted that. I worked 2 jobs. I took out loans. I rode the city bus for 4 years, standing in freezing rain and sweltering heat, clutching my design portfolios and textbooks. I told myself it was building character. I told myself they were right. Then, 3 years later, on Lily's 18th birthday, I drove home for the weekend in my beat-up sedan that rattled every time I went over 40 miles per hour. In the driveway sat a brand-new compact car. A red bow was stuck to the hood. My parents were beaming. Lily was squealing, dangling the keys. She needs a safe way to get to community college, my father muttered when he saw me staring. He could not meet my eyes. That was the moment the financial abuse truly began. Though I did not have the vocabulary for it then, I just called it helping. I called it duty. The first time it happened, I had just landed my first junior design job. I was making barely enough to cover rent and ramen, but I had a steady paycheck. My phone rang at 10 in the evening. It was Diane. "Lily is in trouble," she said, breathless. "She made a mistake with a credit card. It is only $1,400. Catherine, if she does not pay it, it will ruin her credit score before she even starts her life. $1,400. That was my entire savings account plus half my rent. I cannot." "Mom," I said. "Family helps family," Diane snapped, the sweetness gone. "Do you want your sister to fail? Do you want her life ruined over a small mistake? We would do it for you." That was the lie that always hooked me. The hypothetical reciprocity. They would do it for me, so I paid it. I ate instant noodles for 2 months. I walked to work to save gas. I convinced myself it was a one-time rescue mission. It was not. 6 months later, it was $1,800 for a car repair because Lily had neglected to change the oil for 2 years. A year later, it was $3,000 for a legal fee when Lily got into a minor fender bender and did not have insurance. Then it was $5,000. I watched my bank account drain as fast as I could fill it, while I was pulling all-nighters, drafting floor plans until my eyes burned and my fingers cramped. Lily was posting on Instagram. There she was. Drinking mimosas at brunch. There she was. On a weekend trip to the coast with her girlfriends. Wearing a new bikini. There she was. Living the life of a carefree 20-something, funded by the exhaustion of her older sister. Whenever I brought it up, Diane would shut me down with nuclear efficiency. "You are jealous," she would say. "You should be happy you are successful enough to help. Why are you so greedy?" The dynamic solidified into concrete when Lily got pregnant, first with Noah, then 2 years later with Caleb. The father was not in the picture. I never asked for details, and none were volunteered. Suddenly, the guilt trips weaponized the most innocent victims of all. The children. "Catherine, the boys need winter coats." "Catherine, Noah needs braces." "Catherine, the electricity is going to be cut off, and you do not want the babies to freeze, do you?" For the last 6 years, I had been sending a fixed transfer of $700 a month to Lily. $700. That was a mortgage payment on a small starter home in Brookstone. I sent it because every time I looked at Noah and Caleb, with their wide eyes and sticky hands, I felt a crushing responsibility. They did not ask to be born into this chaos. They did not ask for a mother who viewed a job application as a personal insult. So I paid. I became the Parker family ATM. I dispensed cash and absorbed emotional abuse, and in return, I received absolutely nothing. The contrast between my public life and my private life became a jagged line running through my soul. Outside of that house, I was respected. I remember the day my old boss, a stern woman named Margaret who rarely smiled, looked at a mood board I had created for a difficult client. "You have the eye. Catherine," she told me, "you see things other people miss. You understand that a home is not just furniture. It is a feeling." I held on to that compliment for months. When I launched Canvas and Key Design, my first solo client sent me a handwritten thank you note saying I had saved her marriage by giving them a space where they could breathe. My blog comments were filled with strangers telling me I inspired them. I was capable. I was professional. I was talented. But the moment I crossed the threshold of my parents' house or picked up a call from my mother, I was reduced to nothing more than a wallet with legs. I was the ungrateful daughter, the stingy sister, the one who thought she was better than everyone else just because she paid her bills on time. I lived in a state of perpetual cognitive dissonance. I would spend my days designing luxurious, serene master suites with soaking tubs and heated floors for clients, selecting marble slabs that cost more than my car. Then I would drive home to my cramped one-bedroom rental apartment in a noisy complex. I lived frugally, bordering on ascetically. My furniture was a mismatched collection of thrift store finds I had reupholstered myself. My kitchen table was a scratched laminate circle I had found on a curb. I slept on a mattress that was 5 years past its prime. I denied myself everything so that Lily could have everything. I remember one specific Tuesday last November. It was raining, a cold, gray drizzle that soaked into your bones. I was sitting at my drafting table, eating a cup of lukewarm yogurt for dinner because I was too tired to cook. I was scrolling through social media, trying to decompress. A photo popped up on my feed. It was Lily. She was at a spa resort 3 hours away. She was wearing a plush white robe, holding a glass of cucumber water, smiling peacefully. The caption read, "Self-care is mandatory. Mommy needs a break." I looked at the date. I had transferred the $700 into her account that morning. She had told me it was for Caleb's asthma medication and a past-due heating bill. Something inside me fractured. It was a hairline fracture, invisible to the naked eye, but deep. I put down my spoon. I looked around my apartment, the beige walls I was not allowed to paint, the noisy upstairs neighbors stomping around, the draft coming from the window frame. I was 33 years old. I had been working since I was 16. I had absolutely nothing to show for it except a stack of thank you notes from clients and a family that cannibalized me. I closed my eyes and made a vow. It was not a scream. It was a whisper. I am going to buy a house. I told the empty room. I did not just want property. I wanted a fortress. I wanted a front door with a deadbolt that I controlled. I wanted walls that I could paint whatever color I damn well pleased. I wanted a space where, if something went missing, I would know it was a ghost, not my sister. I wanted to stop being a tenant in my own life. For the next year, I became ruthless. I took on extra projects. I worked weekends. I stopped answering my mother's calls on the first ring. I started saying I am broke when she asked for extra money beyond the monthly stipend. I lied. I told them business was slow. I told them the economy was hitting me hard. I hoarded money with the same desperation I had felt at 16 saving for that green dress. But this time, the stakes were higher than a prom. This was about survival. By the time I turned 34, I had enough. It was a stretch. But I had the down payment. I found a small house in a quiet suburb of Brookstone. It was a mid-century ranch, slightly neglected, with overgrown bushes and peeling siding, but it had good bones. It had a backyard with an old oak tree. It had potential. I remember standing in my rental apartment the night before I was set to sign the closing papers. I was looking out the window at the parking lot below, listening to the sirens wailing in the distance. I held up a rendering I had done for a client, a sprawling, sun-drenched living room with Italian leather sofas and custom shelving. Then I looked at my reflection in the glass. I looked tired. There were fine lines appearing around my eyes. My shoulders were permanently hunched from tension. I wondered, when is it my turn? I did not know it then. But my turn was coming. But before I could truly claim my life, I would have to lose the last shred of hope I had for my family. I was about to build my dream home, and they were about to turn it into a nightmare. And that nightmare would be the catalyst for the most satisfying destruction I could ever imagine. Tomorrow, I would sign the papers, I would get the keys, and I would make the mistake of thinking a lock was enough to keep them out. Breaking away from the gravitational pull of my family required more than just willpower. It required capital. For years, I had been stockpiling every cent I could hide from the prying eyes of my mother and the desperate pleas of my sister. I worked my 9-to-5 design job, and then I came home and worked until 2 a.m. on freelance projects. My eyes would blur and my back would ache, but I watched the number in my secret savings account grow. The real turning point came when I finally gathered the courage to leave my firm and officially launch Canvas and Key Design. It was a terrifying leap, but fate, it seemed, was finally ready to stop punishing me. Within my first month, I landed a contract with a local tech startup that had just secured Series B funding. They wanted to completely rebrand their headquarters. They wanted industrial chic, open concepts, and biophilic elements. It was a massive project, the kind that makes a career. When the retainer check cleared, I stared at my banking app for 10 minutes, waiting for it to disappear. It stayed. With that influx of cash, combined with my years of aggressive saving, I finally had enough. I found the house on a Tuesday. It was in a quiet neighborhood on the edge of Brookstone, a place where the lawns were manicured and people actually waved to each other. It was a modest mid-century ranch, nothing ostentatious, but it had a good roof, a sprawling backyard with an ancient oak tree, and most importantly, it was mine. The day I signed the papers was a blur of adrenaline and nausea. I sat across from the title agent, a woman with kind eyes and too much hairspray, and my hand shook so badly I could barely hold the pen. I kept expecting my phone to ring. I kept expecting Diane to burst through the door and tell me that Lily needed $40,000 for some emergency, demanding I hand over my down payment, but the phone did not ring. The bank officer smiled and shook my hand. The realtor placed a heavy brass key in my palm. "Congratulations, Ms. Parker," she said. "Welcome home." I drove straight there. I unlocked the front door and stepped into the empty living room. The air smelled of stale dust and fresh potential. I walked through every room, my heels clicking on the hardwood floors. I touched the walls. I opened the windows to let the spring breeze flush out the stagnation. For the first time in 34 years, I stood in a space where I did not have to worry about making myself small. I lay down in the middle of the living room floor, staring up at the popcorn ceiling I planned to scrape away, and I laughed until I cried. Then, the designer in me took over. I treated my own home like it was my most important client project. I created mood boards that spanned entire walls of my temporary apartment. I wanted the house to be a sanctuary, a physical rejection of the chaos I had grown up in. My childhood home had been loud, cluttered, and stressful. This home would be silent, curated, and serene. I chose a palette of warm neutrals and earth tones. The living room would be in study and texture rather than color. The bedroom would be painted a deep, soothing slate blue. I designated the sunroom at the back of the house as my office, a place where the natural light would flood in, perfect for photographing content for my blog. Parker at home. Then came the furniture. I had spent my entire adult life sleeping on mattresses my friends were throwing away and sitting on sofas I had found at estate sales. Not this time. I decided to make one massive investment. I wanted furniture that signaled I had arrived. I went to a high-end showroom downtown, a place where they serve you sparkling water while you browse fabric swatches. I spent $15,000. It was an astronomical sum, a number that would have given my father a heart attack. But I justified it. This was not just furniture, it was business equipment. My blog was growing, and I planned to do a huge reveal series called The Designer's Home. I needed pieces that photographed beautifully. I ordered a custom sectional sofa upholstered in cream boucle fabric. It was cloud-like, sculptural, and aggressively impractical for anyone with children or messy pets. It was a statement piece that said, "I live a controlled, elegant life." I chose a coffee table made of heavy, tempered glass with a sculptural driftwood base. I selected a solid walnut wardrobe for the master bedroom and a king-sized bed with a tufted velvet headboard in a soft charcoal gray. When the order was finalized, I felt a thrill of possession so intense it was almost dizzying. That evening, fueled by excitement and perhaps a glass of wine, I made a mistake. I opened the Parker family group chat. Usually, this digital space was reserved for Lily sending passive-aggressive updates about her struggles or Mom guilt-tripping me about not visiting enough. I uploaded the three-dimensional renderings of the living room. "Just bought my first house," I typed. "Cannot wait to host a housewarming party once the renovations are done." I expected silence. Or perhaps a thumbs-up emoji from my dad. Instead, Diane replied within 30 seconds, "I want to see it." She wrote, "Send the address." I frowned at my phone. My mother had never visited my apartment. She had never come to see my office. She had never shown interest in my design awards. But now, suddenly, she wanted to see the house. "It is empty right now." "Mom," I replied, "there is nothing to see. We are your family." She texted back, "We want to celebrate you." The guilt mechanism, installed in my psyche since birth, clicked into gear. I sent the address. They arrived 2 days later. I met them at the door. trying to project confidence. I was wearing my best blazer, holding a clipboard with my renovation plans. Diane walked in first, her eyes scanning the space like a building inspector looking for code violations. Lily followed, dragging her feet, while my dad trailed behind, looking uncomfortable. I led them through the rooms, explaining my vision. "Here is where the reading nook will be," I said, gesturing to the bay window, "and I am tearing down this wall to open up the kitchen." Diane walked over to the fireplace and tapped the brick with a manicured fingernail. "It is cute," she said. The word hung in the air. Cute, not impressive, not beautiful, cute. It was the adjective you used for a puppy or a child's drawing. Not a major real estate investment. It is a little small. "Isn't it?" she added, looking around. "For the price you said you paid, I thought you would get more square footage in this part of town. It is 1,800 square feet. "Mom," I said, my smile tightening, "it is perfect for one person." Lily had not said a word. She was wandering around the perimeter of the living room. She had her phone out. I assumed she was texting, but when I looked closer, I realized she was recording. She was panning her camera slowly across the floor-to-ceiling windows, then zooming in on the brand-new smart thermostat I had just installed. Her eyes were not admiring. They were calculating. It was the look of someone mentally rearranging furniture in a space that did not belong to them. "Nice fireplace," Lily muttered, finally lowering her phone. "Noah and Caleb would love a yard like this. Their apartment complex doesn't even have a playground." I felt the familiar prickle of obligation, the trap being laid. "Well, they can come visit when it is finished," I said, keeping my voice breezy and non-committal. Lily just smirked and looked at the empty spot where my $15,000 furniture would soon sit. A week later, the crisis hit. I was in the middle of drafting a proposal when my phone rang. It was the logistics manager from the furniture showroom. "Ms. Parker, I have good news and bad news," he said. "The bad news is our shipping container got held up at the port, so we missed your original window. The good news is we can deliver everything: the sofa, the bed, the wardrobe this coming Tuesday morning, between 8 and 12. My stomach dropped. Tuesday morning was impossible. Tuesday was the day I was presenting to the boutique hotel chain. This was the biggest pitch of my life. If I landed this, it would move my studio into a different tax bracket. It was a presentation I'd been preparing for months. I had to be in a boardroom downtown at 9 o'clock sharp. "I cannot do Tuesday morning," I said, gripping the phone. "Can we push it to the afternoon? I'm sorry," he replied. "If we do not deliver Tuesday morning, the next available slot for your route is 3 weeks from now." 3 weeks. My mind raced. I had the photographer booked for the blog reveal in 10 days. I had a sponsored content deal with a paint company that relied on those photos being posted by the end of the month. If I delayed the furniture, I delayed the shoot. If I delayed the shoot, I breached my contract with the sponsor. I would lose thousands of dollars in revenue and look unprofessional. I hung up and put my head in my hands. I had no employees I could trust with this yet. My friends all worked full-time jobs. I was pacing my kitchen, trying to figure out if I could hire a TaskRabbit or a stranger to sit in my empty house with $15,000 worth of merchandise. When my mother called, she did not even say hello. "Lily said you seemed stressed about something on Facebook." She said, "What is wrong?" I was so desperate for a solution that I let my guard down. I explained the situation, the delivery, the conflict, the 3-week delay, the hotel pitch. There was a silence on the other end of the line. Then, Diane's voice came back, warm and soothing. It was the voice she used when I was sick as a child, the voice that made me want to curl up and let her handle everything. "Catherine, honey, why are you panicking?" she asked. "This is what family is for." I paused. "What do you mean, I will go over and let them in?" she said. "Just give me a spare key. I will sit there, make sure they do not scratch the floors, and lock up when they are done. You go crush your presentation." I hesitated. My instincts, honed by years of financial trauma, screamed, "No, do not give her the key. Do not let her into your sanctuary." But then I looked at the calendar. I looked at the mounting pressure, and I looked at the opportunity, Diane continued, her voice taking on a tone of wounded pride. Do you not trust your own mother? I just want to help you. You have worked so hard for this house. Let me do this one thing for you. I wanted to believe her. I wanted, so desperately, to believe that my success had finally earned her respect. I wanted to believe that she saw this house not as a resource to be plundered, but as an achievement to be protected. Okay, I said, my voice quiet. Thank you, Mom. That would really save me. The next day, I drove to her house. I had a brand new, shiny silver key in my hand. It was the spare to my front door. When I handed it to her, Diane's fingers closed around it tightly. She smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. Don't worry about a thing, she said, slipping the key into her pocket. Focus on your big meeting. We will handle everything at the house. I drove away feeling a strange mixture of relief and nausea. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself that people change. I told myself that a mother would not sabotage her daughter's biggest moment. I was a fool. I had just handed the fox the key to the henhouse, and I had even thanked her for taking it. The high from the presentation was unlike anything I had ever experienced. Standing in that boardroom on the 42nd floor, overlooking the city skyline, I felt invincible. I had spent the last 45 minutes walking the executive team of the boutique hotel chain through my vision. I pitched them a concept of organic luxury, blending local artisan textures with high-end modern minimalism. When I finished, there was a silence that lasted for 3 heartbeats. In my old life, the life where I was Diane's daughter and Lily's ATM, that silence would have made me crumble. I would have filled it with apologies or nervous laughter. But this was the new Catherine. This was the Catherine who owned a home and set boundaries. I stood my ground, keeping eye contact with the CEO. Then, he smiled. It was not a polite smile. It was a hungry smile. Catherine, he said, leaning forward, this is exactly what we have been missing. We have been interviewing firms for 3 months, and everyone keeps pitching us the same recycled trends. You just gave us a soul. He extended his hand across the mahogany table. Welcome to the team. You are going places. Ms. Parker. I walked out of that building with a signed contract worth more than my last 3 years of income combined. The sky outside was a brilliant, piercing blue. The air felt crisp. I got into my car and gripped the steering wheel, letting out a shout of pure, unadulterated joy. I drove home with the radio blasting. I was not just driving to a house. I was driving to my sanctuary. The timing, I thought, was cosmic. The universe was finally aligning. The furniture delivery was supposed to have happened between 8 and 12. By now, the delivery crew would be gone. My mother would have locked up and left the key under the mat as we discussed. I spent the 20-minute drive fantasizing. I visualized opening the front door. I pictured the way the afternoon sun would be hitting that cream boucle sofa. I imagined the texture of the fabric under my fingertips. I could see the glass coffee table reflecting the light, anchoring the room. I planned to pour myself a glass of expensive red wine, sit on my $15,000 sofa, and just breathe. I was going to post a photo to my story, just a simple shot of the coffee table with the caption, "Home." I pulled into my driveway. The house looked peaceful. The oak tree in the front yard cast long, dappled shadows across the porch. It was the picture of suburban idyll. I walked up the steps, my heels clicking on the concrete. I reached under the doormat and found the spare key exactly where Diane said she would leave it. A surge of gratitude washed over me. Maybe I had been too harsh on her. She had shown up. She had helped me protect my career. Maybe, just maybe, this house was the fresh start we all needed. I unlocked the door, took a deep breath, and pushed it open. The first thing that hit me was the smell. It was not the smell of fresh linen and new wood that accompanies high-end furniture. It was a heavy, cloying scent. It smelled of stale cigarette smoke, cheap lavender laundry detergent, and something damp, like mildew trapped in foam. I froze in the doorway. My brain refused to process the visual information in front of me. It was as if reality had glitched. My beautiful, empty living room was not empty anymore, but it also did not contain the furniture I had spent months selecting. In the center of the room, where my sleek, cream-colored sectional should have been, sat a beast. It was a massive, lumpy, chocolate-brown microfiber sofa. I knew this sofa. I knew it intimately. It was the sofa Lily had bought at a discount outlet 5 years ago. The fabric on the left armrest was shredded, white stuffing poking out like a hernia. A souvenir from a cat she had owned for 2 weeks before getting bored of it. There was a dark, circular stain on the middle cushion that looked like oil. I blinked, waiting for the image to correct itself. It did not. In front of the sofa, where my tempered glass and driftwood coffee table should have been, sat a wooden monstrosity. It was a rectangular pine table with legs that did not quite match. The surface was a map of neglect, white rings from condensation, deep scratches, and doodles made with permanent marker. I could clearly make out a stick figure drawn in red ink near the corner. "No," I whispered. My voice sounded thin and reedy in the quiet house. "No." I dropped my bag. It hit the floor with a heavy thud. I walked into the room, my legs moving automatically, like I was wading through water. I looked around. My custom floor lamp was missing. In its place was a plastic torture lamp with a cracked shade. Leaning precariously against the wall, I turned and ran toward the stairs. The panic was rising in my throat, hot and acidic. "Please," I prayed. "Not the bedroom. Please, not the bedroom." I took the stairs 2 at a time. I burst into the master suite, the room I had painted that serene slate blue to induce calm. It looked like a crime scene. My walnut wardrobe was gone. My king-sized bed frame with the tufted velvet headboard was gone. Lying directly on my refinished hardwood floor was a mattress. It was not my mattress. It was a twin-sized mattress, stained yellow in the center, the edges curling up like a dying leaf. Next to it stood a plastic 3-drawer storage unit, the kind you buy at a dollar store for college dorms. One of the drawers was hanging open, revealing nothing but dust. I stood there, staring at the plastic unit. I recognized a sticker on the side, a peeling cartoon dinosaur. This was the dresser from Noah's room. This was the mattress Caleb used to wet until he was 4. The smell was stronger here. It was the smell of Lily's house, that specific cocktail of neglect and clutter that I had spent my entire adult life trying to scrub off my skin. They had not just taken my things. They had infected my sanctuary with their filth. I backed out of the room, my hands trembling so hard I had to grab the doorframe to steady myself. This could not be real. Was this a prank? A sick, twisted joke? My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, my fingers fumbling over the screen. It was a notification from Instagram, a direct message from Lily. I opened it. It was a photograph. The image was bright and chaotic. In the background, I saw the peeling lime green wallpaper that defined Lily's living room. But in the foreground, dominating the frame, was my sofa, my cream boucle sectional, my $15,000 investment. Noah and Caleb were jumping on it. Noah was wearing sneakers muddy, red sneakers, and he was mid-air, about to land on the pristine white fabric. Caleb was sitting on the chaise lounge, holding a juice box that looked dangerously close to tipping over. Lily had added a caption in bold, cheerful font. "Best surprise aunt ever, new furniture for my boys. Blessed family, first auntie, Kathy." The air left my lungs. I stared at the screen until the pixels started to swim. Best surprise aunt ever. She was framing this as a gift. She was creating a public narrative where I, the benevolent, wealthy sister, had surprised her with luxury furniture while taking her trash in return. I felt a wave of nausea so violent I thought I was going to be sick right there on the landing. It was not just theft. It was a rewriting of reality. I stumbled back downstairs. I needed to see it. I needed proof that I was not losing my mind. I pulled up the SafeNest app on my phone. I had installed the security system 2 days ago, primarily to monitor the front porch for packages. I had not even told Diane about it. I scrolled back through the timeline until I found the footage from 9:30 that morning. I pressed play. The video was crisp and high definition. A white delivery truck pulled up. 2 men in uniform got out. Diane stepped out onto the porch. She looked confident, authoritative. She was wearing her Sunday cardigan. She greeted the delivery men. I watched, horrified, as she gestured not into the house, but toward the driveway where a rented moving van was waiting. Then, the camera angle shifted slightly as the men began to unload my furniture, but they did not bring it inside. Under Diane's direction, they loaded the cream sofa, the walnut wardrobe, and the glass table directly into the back of the rental van. Then came the second act of the play. Lily's beat-up sedan pulled into the frame. She got out, smoking a cigarette, which she flicked onto my newly mulched flower bed. She popped her trunk. I watched my mother and my sister direct the movers, who clearly looked confused, but were being paid to do a job to unload the brown sofa and the stained mattress from the rental van and carry them into my house. I turned the volume up on my phone. The microphone on the camera picked up their voices clearly. "Careful with that," Diane said, pointing at the brown sofa. "Do not scratch the door frame." Lily laughed. It was a sharp hacking sound. "I cannot believe she actually bought this stuff," Lily said, looking at my new sofa as it was shoved into the van. "It is so white. The boys are going to ruin it in a week, then put a cover on it until she visits." Diane snapped. "She is going to freak out," Lily said, taking a drag from a new cigarette. "Let her," Diane replied. "She has too much anyway. Look at this house. Does one person need all this? Besides, she gave you a key. That implies consent to manage the property." "Manage the property," the video continued. I watched them hustle the movers. "Hurry up," Diane said, checking her watch. She said her meeting ends at noon. "We need to be gone before she gets back. We do not want a scene. A scene." She wanted to avoid a scene. The final frame of the clip froze my blood. The movers were finished. The rental van was loaded with my future. My house was filled with their past. Diane stood on the porch, about to close the door. She looked directly at the spot where the camera was hidden, though she did not see it. She held up the silver spare key I had given her yesterday. She shrugged. It was a shrug of pure, unadulterated entitlement. It was a shrug that said, "I gave birth to you. So I own you. I own your house. I own your money. I own your happiness." She locked the door. The video ended. I lowered the phone. The silence in the house was deafening. I looked at the brown sofa. I could see the dust motes dancing in the light that was streaming through the window, the light I had fantasized about. I tried to take a step forward, but my knees gave out. I sank to the floor. I refused to sit on that sofa. I would rather sit on the hard wood than let that filth touch my clothes. I sat there, hugging my knees to my chest. I was 34 years old. I was a successful business owner. I had just closed a deal that would change my career, and yet, I was sitting on the floor of my own home, robbed blind by the two people who were supposed to protect me. It was not about the money. I could earn $15,000 again. It was not even about the furniture. It was the fact that they had looked at my joy, my hard work, my sanctuary, and decided it was simply a resource to be harvested. They had looked at my boundary, the first real boundary I had ever tried to set by buying this house, and they had driven a truck right through it. I thought about the key. I thought about the hope I had felt when I handed it to Diane. Maybe she is proud of me. She was not proud. She was predatory. I sat there for 30 minutes. The sun moved across the floor. The shadows lengthened. I watched the dust settle on the scratched pine table. I cried, but it was not the sobbing of a heartbroken child. It was a silent, hot stream of tears that burned my cheeks. It was the morning of an illusion. The illusion that I had a mother. The illusion that I had a sister. The illusion that if I just gave enough, paid enough, worked enough, they would finally love me. They did not love me. They consumed me. The tears stopped. My breathing slowed. The heat in my chest cooled into something hard and heavy, like iron. I wiped my face with the back of my hand. I stood up. My legs were steady now. I looked around the room one last time. I looked at the trash they had dragged into my life, expecting me to accept it, expecting me to clean it up, expecting me to smile and say thank you because family helps family. I walked to the window and looked out at the street. "No," I said aloud. The word hung in the air. Absolute and final. It is over. I got back into my car and drove. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles turned white, but my mind was eerily clear. I did not drive to the police station. Not yet. I drove straight to the house my grandmother Eleanor had left to Lily. It was a small, single-story bungalow on the other side of town, in a neighborhood that had seen better days. When Grandma died, the will was simple. Lily, the fragile one, the one with the children and no husband, needed security. So she got the house. I got a box of old photo albums and a good luck. Over the years, that house had become another drain on my finances. I had paid for the roof repair when a storm tore off the shingles. I had paid to replace the water heater when it flooded the basement. I had paid the property taxes 3 years in a row because Lily claimed she forgot until the foreclosure notice arrived. I pulled up to the curb. The lawn was overgrown, dandelions choking out the grass. A tricycle lay on its side in the middle of the driveway. I did not bother knocking. I had a key. Of course, I was the one who paid for the locksmith the last time Lily lost hers. I unlocked the front door and pushed it open. The visual assault was immediate. My living room had been transplanted into a space that was too small to contain it. The effect was grotesque. My beautiful, custom-made cream buccal sectional was jammed into the corner of Lily's cramped living room. It was shoved so tightly against the wall that the expensive fabric was being crushed against a radiator. The tempered glass coffee table, the one I had envisioned holding art books and fresh flowers, was wedged between the sofa and the television stand. It was already covered in clutter: a sippy cup, a pile of unopened mail, a sticky remote control. The room smelled of fried food and stale air, a sharp contrast to the showroom scent the furniture had carried just this morning. And there they were, a tableau of domestic theft. Diane was sitting on my sofa. She had her legs crossed, resting her feet still wearing shoes on the chaise lounge. She was holding a porcelain teacup, sipping calmly as if she were sitting in the lobby of a 5-star hotel. Robert, my father, was sitting in his usual armchair, which they had pushed into the corner to make room for my stolen property. He was staring intently at the television, refusing to look toward the door. Lily was standing by the kitchen counter, scrolling through her phone. When she saw me, she did not flinch. She did not look guilty. She smiled. "Hey, sis," she said. "You made good time." I walked into the center of the room. I felt like a giant in a dollhouse, looming over them. I did not scream. I did not throw things. The rage inside me had distilled into something cold and sharp, like a surgical instrument. I looked at Diane. "All of this is mine," I said. My voice was steady, low, and dangerous. "You and Lily took these things from my house while I was working." Diane set her teacup down on my glass table. It made a sharp clink. She looked at me with an expression of mild annoyance, as if I were interrupting a favorite television program. "Oh, Catherine, stop being so dramatic," she said. She smoothed the fabric of the sofa with her hand. "We did not steal anything. We just moved it. You entered my home without my permission." I said, "You used a key I gave you for an emergency to empty my house." "I did not empty it," Diane corrected me. "I redecorated. Look, Catherine, let us be realistic. You live alone in that big house, 1,800 square feet for one person. It is excessive." She gestured around the cramped room. "Your sister has a family," Diane continued. "She has 2 growing boys. They need space. They need comfort. That brown sofa of hers was falling apart. It was bad for their backs. I simply balanced the scales. You have too much, and she has too little. It is just a redistribution of resources within the family." I stared at her. The logic was so twisted, so narcissistic, that it was almost impressive. "So you decided to redistribute $15,000 worth of custom furniture?" I asked. Without asking me, Lily laughed. She walked over and leaned against the back of my sofa. "Come on, Kate," she said. "You are a designer. That is your whole job, right? You make ugly things look good." She gestured vaguely toward the door. "That stuff I sent over to your place? It has potential. If anyone can make that ratty old couch look chic, it is you. Call it vintage, Call it rustic. I am basically helping you build your portfolio. I am giving you a challenge. I am recycling. She smirked, picking at a loose thread on her shirt. Besides, she added, this color looks better in here anyway. It brightens up the room. I looked at the two of them. My mother, the architect of my guilt. My sister, the beneficiary of my labor. I want it back. I said, I want all of it back. Now. Call the movers. Lily's smirk vanished. She stood up straighter, crossing her arms over her chest. You cannot be serious, she said. I am deadly serious. I replied, you have 1 hour to get this furniture out of here and back to my house, or I will hire someone to do it and send you the bill. Lily let out a scoff of disbelief. Then, she played her trump card, the card that never failed. She turned toward the hallway that led to the bedrooms. Noah Caleb, she called out, her voice pitching up into a sweet, sing-song tone. Come say hi to Auntie Catherine. I heard the thudding of small feet. A moment later, my two nephews ran into the room. Noah was 7, Caleb was 5. They were innocent, chaotic, and loud. They saw me and froze. Then, seeing their mother's face, they seemed to sense the script. Lily looked at me, then looked at the boys. She widened her eyes significantly, a silent stage direction. Auntie Kate wants to take the new sofa away, Lily said, her voice trembling with fake sadness. She says we are not allowed to have nice things. She wants us to sit on the floor. It was a masterclass in manipulation. Noah's face crumpled. He ran over and threw himself onto the sofa, burying his face in the cushions. No, he shouted. It is soft. I like it. It is my fortress, Caleb. Following his brother's lead, ran to me and grabbed my leg. His hands were sticky with something orange. Please, Auntie, he wailed, looking up at me with wide, tear-filled eyes. Don't take our chair. Mom said it was a present. She said you bought it for us because you love us. Don't you love us? I looked down at Caleb. I felt a pang of genuine heartbreak. I did love them. That was why I had sent $700 every month for years. That was why I bought them clothes and toys. But as I looked up, I saw Lily watching me over Caleb's head. Her eyes were dry. There was a glint of triumph in them. She knew exactly what she was doing. She was using her children as human shields. She was weaponizing their affection to protect her theft. I gently detached Caleb's hands from my trousers. I did not hug him. I did not say the usual soothing words. I looked at Robert, my father, the man who had sat silently through every injustice of my childhood. Dad, I said, say something. Robert finally looked away from the television. He looked tired. He looked at Diane, who was glaring at him, daring him to contradict her. Then he looked at me. Catherine, he said, his voice heavy with resignation. You are making a scene. I am making a scene, I repeated, incredulous. They robbed me. Dad, it is just furniture. Catherine, he said, waving his hand dismissively. It is just wood and fabric. You are doing well. You are successful. You can buy another set. Why do you have to take it away from the boys? Look at them. They are happy. He sighed, leaning back in the armchair that was squeezed into the corner. Be the bigger person. Catherine, he said, you always are. Just let them have it. It is not worth tearing the family apart over a couch. The words hit me like a physical blow. Be the bigger person, the mantra of my existence, the code phrase that meant, let us abuse you because you can take it. I looked at them. Diane, smug and entitled. Lily, manipulative and cruel. Robert, weak and enabling. And the children, being trained to be the next generation of leeches. I realized then that arguing was useless. If I stayed here and debated ethics with them, I would lose. I would eventually cave to the crying children and the guilt-tripping parents. I would leave this house without my furniture, and in a month, they would take something else, my car, my jewelry, my identity. There was no bottom to this well, unless I capped it. I took a step back. I felt a strange calm settle over me. It was the calm of a person who has nothing left to lose because everything has already been taken. I reached into my purse. I did not pull out my checkbook. I did not pull out a tissue. I pulled out my phone. I tapped the screen, bringing up the keypad. I held it up so they could see it. "Okay," I said. My voice was not loud, but it cut through the sound of Noah's fake crying like a knife. Diane frowned. "Who are you calling the movers?" "No," I said. I looked at Robert. "You said it is just furniture, right? Just objects." Robert nodded, looking confused. "Yes, it is just stuff." "Good," I said. "Then you won't mind if I let the law decide who owns that stuff." I typed 3 digits, 911. The room went silent. Noah stopped crying instantly, sensing the shift in atmosphere. Diane stood up, her teacup rattling in its saucer. "You wouldn't dare," she hissed. "Catherine, put the phone away," Robert said, standing up now, panic finally entering his eyes. "This is a private family matter." "No," I said. "Theft is not a family matter. Burglary is not a family matter. I have video evidence of you breaking into my home. I have receipts proving I paid for every single item in this room, and I have 2 police officers who I worked with on the precinct renovation project who told me to call them if I ever had trouble." I pressed the green call button. I put the phone to my ear. Diane took a step toward me, her face twisting into an ugly mask of rage. "If you make that call, you are dead to me," she screamed. "Do you hear me? You are an ungrateful, selfish brat." Lily looked terrified for the first time. She grabbed the boys and pulled them back. "She is bluffing," Lily said, her voice wavering. "She won't arrest her own mother." I looked Lily dead in the eye. "Hello," I said into the phone, my voice clear and unwavering. "I would like to report a grand larceny. Yes, I am at the location now." I turned my back on them. Behind me, I heard the sound of a teacup shattering on the floor and my mother screaming my name. "You dare," she shrieked. "You dare do this to us." I walked out the front door and stood on the porch, waiting for the operator to connect me to dispatch. The afternoon air felt cool on my face. My heart was pounding, but my hands were steady. I was done being the bigger person. Today, I was going to be the person who got justice. I did not scroll through my contacts looking for a friend to cry to. I did not call my aunt. I did not call the boyfriend I had broken up with 3 months ago. Standing on the cracked sidewalk outside my sister's house, with the cool wind drying the tears on my cheeks, I made the only call that mattered. I dialed the non-emergency number for the Brookstone Police Department. Though my thumb hovered over 911 for a split second, I wanted to scream, but I knew that screaming would only make me look like the hysterical daughter my mother was already painting me to be. I needed to be cold. I needed to be professional. The dispatcher answered on the second ring. "Brookstone Police, how can I help you?" My voice shook on the first syllable, but I forced myself to take a breath. I pictured the boardroom I had stood in just that morning. I channeled the Catherine Parker who commanded respect, not the Catherine Parker who was a doormat. "My name is Catherine Parker." I said, "I would like to report a grand larceny. I am at the location where my stolen property is currently being held." The dispatcher asked for details. I gave them with surgical precision. My mother and sister entered my home using a spare key I had provided for an emergency. They removed approximately $15,000 worth of custom furniture without my consent and transported it to a different location. I have video evidence of the theft. I have receipts for every item. There was a pause on the line. Then, a click. "Hold on, Ms. Parker," the dispatcher said. "I see a note here on your file linked to the precinct renovation project. Let me patch you through to Lieutenant Marquez. He is the watch commander on duty." A moment later, a familiar, gravelly voice came on the line. "Lieutenant Marquez." I had spent 6 months working with him when I redesigned the station's break room and reception area. He was a no-nonsense man who appreciated that I had delivered his project under budget and ahead of schedule. "Ms. Parker," Marquez asked, "is everything all right?" "It is not, Lieutenant," I said. "I am standing outside my sister's house. My family has emptied my home. They took everything." I explained the situation again, briefly. I could hear the shift in his tone from friendly acquaintance to law enforcement officer. Sit tight. Catherine, he said, do not re-enter the house. Do not engage with them further. I am 2 blocks away. I am coming myself. I hung up and stood by my car. I crossed my arms over my chest, staring at the closed front door of the bungalow. Inside that house were the people who were supposed to be my safety net. Instead, they were the predators I needed protection from. 3 minutes later, a police cruiser turned the corner. It did not use its siren, but the blue lights were flashing, cutting through the gray afternoon gloom. It pulled up behind Lily's beat-up sedan. The effect on the neighborhood was instantaneous. Curtains twitched in the windows across the street. A group of teenagers playing basketball 3 houses down stopped and watched. A neighbor who had been watering her lawn turned off the hose and stood there, staring openly. Lieutenant Marquez stepped out of the car, followed by a younger officer I did not know. Marquez adjusted his belt and walked toward me. He looked at the house, then at me. "Are you safe?" he asked. "Physically." "Yes," I said, "but my property is inside. Let us go get it," he said. We walked to the door. I unlocked it again. The sound of the lock tumbling seemed louder this time. When we stepped inside, the tableau had not changed much, except that the volume of the television had been turned up, likely to drown out the reality of what was happening. When Diane saw the uniforms, she gasped. She stood up so quickly that my coffee table, rattled. "Oh my God," she cried, clutching her chest. "Catherine, you actually called the police on your own mother?" Lily stood up, her face pale. She grabbed Noah and Caleb, pulling them into her side, instantly playing the role of the terrified mother protecting her cubs from the big bad wolf. "Officer, thank God you are here," Diane said, rushing toward Marquez before he could even speak. Her voice went into a high, frantic pitch. "My daughter is having a breakdown. She is confused. She has been under so much stress at work, and I think she is having a psychotic break. She gave us this furniture." Marquez did not blink. He held up a hand, stopping Diane in her tracks. "Ma'am, please step back," he said calmly. "It is a misunderstanding," Lily chimed in from the corner. "It is a gift. Look, I posted it on Instagram. She liked the post." "Well, she saw the post." Lily shoved her phone toward the younger officer, displaying the picture of her children jumping on my sofa with the caption, "About the best aunt ever." "See," Lily said, her voice trembling. She gave it to the boys. "Now she is regretting it because she is selfish and she wants to take it back. Who calls the cops on their nephews?" Marquez turned to me. "Ms. Parker, did you gift this furniture to your sister?" "No," I said. "Is there any written agreement, any text message, any email where you stated that they could take these items?" "No," I repeated. Diane let out a wail that sounded more like a wounded animal than a human being. "She is lying." Diane screamed. "She has always been jealous of her sister. She is rich. Officer, she has so much money she doesn't know what to do with it. She is trying to punish us because we are poor." The air in the room was thick with their desperation. They were throwing everything at the wall, hoping something would stick. They were relying on the old social contract, the one that says police do not get involved in family squabbles, the one that says a mother's word is law. But Lieutenant Marquez was not part of our family dynamic. He was a man of evidence. "Ms. Parker mentioned video footage," Marquez said, looking at me. I nodded. I pulled out my phone. My hands were steady now. I opened the SafeNest app. I connected it to the Bluetooth speaker system that Lily had set up on the television console, ironically. A speaker I had bought her for Christmas 2 years ago. "I want you to listen to this," I said. I pressed play. The audio filled the small, cluttered room. It was crystal clear. "Hurry up!" My mother's voice boomed from the speakers. "She said her meeting ends at noon. We need to be gone before she gets back." Diane went silent. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. "I cannot believe she actually bought this stuff." Lily's recorded voice laughed. "It is so white. The boys are going to ruin it in a week, then put a cover on it until she visits," the recorded Diane replied. "She has too much anyway. Look at this house. Does one person need all this?" And then, the final nail in the coffin, the moment on the porch. "Lock the door before she gets back," Diane's voice whispered. conspiratorial and malicious. No traces. She won't dare do anything. Lily's voice replied. The recording ended. The silence that followed was absolute. The neighbors outside could probably hear a pin drop if the window had been open. Marquez looked at Diane. He looked at Lily. He looked at the children, who were staring at their mother and grandmother with wide, confused eyes. That does not sound like a gift, ma'am, Marquez said. That sounds like premeditated theft. Diane's face turned a blotchy red. I was managing her assets, she stammered. I have a key. That means I have permission. Possession of a key does not grant permission to liquidate the contents of a home, Marquez said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming harder. You entered the premises with the intent to remove high-value items without the owner's consent. In the state of Massachusetts, theft of property valued over $1,200 is grand larceny. Ms. Parker tells me the value here is approximately $15,000. That is a felony. The word felony hung in the air like smoke. Lily started to cry. Real tears this time. Mom told me to, she sobbed. She said it was fine. She said Catherine wouldn't mind. Diane turned on her younger daughter, her eyes bulging. Do not you dare blame this on me. You are the one who wanted the sofa. You are the one who sent her that picture. Marquez whistled sharp and loud, cutting off the budding civil war. Enough, he said. He turned to me. Ms. Parker, you have a choice to make, he said. This is clearly a criminal matter. You have the evidence. We can proceed in two ways. Option 1. They return every single item immediately, right now, in the condition it was taken, and we leave it at that. Option 2. You press charges. We file an official police report for grand larceny and breaking and entering. Diane looked at me, her eyes pleading. She clasped her hands together. Catherine, please, she whispered, do not do this. Think of the family. Think of your father. We will give it back. We will hire a truck right now. Just do not file a report. Please. I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had taken my prom dress. The woman who had guilted me into paying thousands of dollars in credit card debt. The woman who had just stood in my house and laughed about how I had too much. If I just took the furniture back, they would do it again. Maybe not today, maybe not next month, but eventually, they would decide they were entitled to something else. My car, my savings, my sanity. Without a paper trail, without a legal boundary, I would never be safe. I thought about the $700 a month. I thought about the years of eating ramen. I thought about the brown, filthy sofa sitting in my living room. Family helps family. Right, Mom? I asked softly. Diane nodded frantically. Yes, exactly. Family helps family. I looked at Lieutenant Marquez. I want my things back immediately, I said, and I want the report filed. Diane let out a gasp of horror. What she screeched. You cannot. It will go on our record. That is the point, I said. Marquez nodded. Understood, he said. He turned to the younger officer. Call it in, and get a transport truck here. If they cannot pay for it, we will bill it to them later as part of the restitution. The next hour was a blur of surreal activity. A moving truck was summoned. It was not a professional moving company with branded shirts. It was a local guy with a box truck who did emergency hauls. Someone the police had on speed dial. Under the watchful eye of Lieutenant Marquez and his partner, my family was forced to dismantle their stolen kingdom. I stood by the curb, watching. Neighbors were now standing openly on their porches. Phones were out. People were recording. This was the ultimate humiliation for a woman like Diane, who prized appearance above all else. I watched as the movers, two burly guys who looked very confused by the domestic tension, carried my cream boucle sofa out the front door. It looked pristine and ridiculous against the backdrop of Lily's peeling porch paint. Diane was standing by the door, sobbing into a tissue, shouting at anyone who would listen. My own daughter, she wailed. After everything I sacrificed for her, she is arresting her mother over a chair. Lily was sitting on the front steps, smoking a cigarette with shaking hands, refusing to look at anyone. Then came the glass coffee table, then the walnut wardrobe, then the headboard. One by one, The pieces of my sanctuary were paraded down the driveway and loaded into the truck. Finally, the movers went back in for the last items. They came out carrying the brown microfiber sofa, the one with the hole in the armrest, and the stained mattress. "Where do you want these?" one of the movers asked. Looking at me, I looked at the trash that had defiled my home. "Leave them here," I said. "I do not want them." They dropped the brown sofa on Lily's front lawn with a heavy thud. A cloud of dust poofed up from the cushions. My father, Robert, finally came out of the house. He walked past Diane, past Lily, and came down to the sidewalk where I was standing. He looked older than I had ever seen him. "Catherine," he said quietly, "you made your point. Can we stop the police report now?" I looked at him. "No, Dad." I said, "The report stands. It is the only insurance I have." He looked at me for a long time, as if trying to find the daughter who used to apologize for taking up space. He did not find her. "You are breaking your mother's heart," he said. "She broke her own heart when she decided I was a bank instead of a daughter." I replied, "The truck was loaded." Lieutenant Marquez walked over to me, holding a clipboard. "Here is your case number," he said, handing me a slip of paper. "The report will be finalized by tomorrow morning. You can pick up a copy at the station. We will escort the truck to your residence to ensure everything arrives safely. Thank you." "Lieutenant," I said, I did not feel happy. I did not feel the rush of victory I had seen in movies. My stomach churned, and my hands were cold. But as I looked at the empty lawn, at my mother weeping over her lost control, and at the police lights reflecting in the windows, I felt something else. I felt light. For the first time in 34 years, the heavy cloak of obligation had been lifted. I had burned the bridge, and the fire was keeping me warm. I got into my car. I did not look back at them. I put the car in drive and followed the truck carrying my life back to where it belonged. The furniture was back in its place. My cream boucle sofa sat exactly where I had envisioned it. The glass coffee table was wiped clean of the sticky fingerprints my nephews had left behind. The walnut wardrobe was reassembled in the master bedroom. To an outsider, my home looked perfect. It looked like the sanctuary I had paid for, but the air inside was heavy. I poured myself a glass of wine, my hands trembling slightly, not from fear, but from the adrenaline crash. I sat down on my sofa, and opened my phone. I had expected silence. I had expected that, shamed by the police intervention, my mother and sister would retreat to lick their wounds. I should have known better. Narcissists do not retreat when they are cornered. They attack. My Instagram notifications were a solid wall of red. My direct messages were climbing by the minute. I opened the app. The first message was from a stranger: "You are a monster for doing that to children." The second message: "I hope your business rots." Selfish bitch. My stomach dropped. I switched over to Facebook, a platform I rarely used except for family obligations. There it was, the source of the radiation. Lily had posted 20 minutes ago. It was a long, rambling manifesto of victimhood. I never thought I would have to air family laundry. The post began. "But today my heart is shattered. My own sister, the big-shot interior designer Catherine Parker, just called the police on me. Why? Because she decided to rip furniture out from under her own nephews. Furniture she gave us. Below the text was a photo. It was a masterpiece of manipulation. It showed Noah and Caleb crying on the floor of Lily's living room. The room was empty because the police had just removed my things, and Lily had not yet dragged her old junk back inside. So the boys looked like they were living in a destitute, empty house. She has $1 million home." Lily continued. "She has everything. We have nothing. And yet, she sent armed officers to terrify 2 little boys over a couch. Money really does change people. Hug your family close tonight, because apparently, blood is not thicker than a checkbook." The post already had 43 shares. I scrolled down to the comments. It was a bloodbath. "That is disgusting," wrote my Aunt Linda. A woman who had not sent me a birthday card in 10 years. I always knew she was stuck up. Some people forget where they came from. My cousin Mike added, "Karma will get her." Then I saw my mother's shared post. Diane had reposted Lily's story with her own commentary, "I failed as a mother. I raised a daughter who values velvet over family. Pray for us." I felt like I had been punched in the throat. They were spinning a narrative where I was the villain, the wealthy oppressor crushing the poor, struggling single mother. They conveniently left out the part where they broke into my house. They left out the part where I had supported them for 15 years. I was about to close the app, to block them all and throw my phone into the river, when an email notification popped up at the top of my screen. The subject line made my blood run cold. Urgent upcoming brand collaboration. Opal Shade. Opal Shade was a high-end window treatment company. I had been courting them for 6 months. We were scheduled to shoot a massive campaign in my new living room next week. It was the kind of sponsorship that would put canvas and key design on the national map. I opened the email. It was from the marketing director. "Sarah, hi Catherine. We are seeing some very concerning posts circulating on social media regarding a police incident at your family's home. As a brand that focuses on family values and comfort, we need to understand the situation. The optics are currently quite damaging. Please call me." The room spun. This was not just drama anymore. This was a direct strike at my livelihood. My mother and sister were not just hurting my feelings. They were burning down the career that paid for the very money they felt entitled to steal. If I lost the Opal Shade contract, other brands would follow. My reputation in Brookstone would be mud. Clients did not hire designers who stole from starving nephews. Panic clawed at my throat. My first instinct was to beg, to call Sarah and cry, to explain it was all a lie, but then I looked at the sofa. I looked at the space I had fought for. No, I was not the 16-year-old girl crying over a stolen prom dress anymore. I was a business owner. I was a professional, and I was going to handle this like a PR crisis, not a family feud. I walked into my office, my sun-drenched, beautiful office. I sat down at my desk and opened my laptop. I logged into the back end of my blog. Parker, at home. I did not write a rant. I did not use all caps. I did not call Lily names. I wrote a case study. I titled the post, "The Cost of Boundaries: Why Kindness is Not a Spare Key." I began the post calmly. Today, I was faced with the hardest decision of my life. I wrote, I had to choose between enabling theft or protecting my home. I laid out the facts. I explained that I had purchased a home and furnished it with my life savings. I explained that I had a work emergency and trusted a family member with a spare key to facilitate a delivery. Then, I uploaded the receipts. I posted a photo of the invoice for the $15,000 worth of furniture, with the date clearly visible. I posted a screenshot of the text message where Diane asked for the key, promising to help, and then I posted the video. I blurred the faces of my mother and sister to avoid legal issues, and I muted the names, but the actions were undeniable. The video showed 2 women unlocking a door. It showed them directing movers to empty a house. It showed them laughing about how she won't dare do anything. I did not include the video of the police arriving. I did not include the photos of crying children. I kept it strictly about the property and the violation of trust. I concluded the post with a paragraph that came straight from the wound in my chest. We are often told that family is everything, but family is not a license to steal. Family is not a license to enter your home without permission and strip it bare. I love my nephews, but I cannot teach them that love means letting people walk all over you. Today, I took my furniture back. Tomorrow, I hope to take my life back. Lying about a theft does not make it a gift. And kindness does not mean letting people pick the lock to your sanctuary, both literally and metaphorically. I hit publish. Then, I took a screenshot of the blog title and the first paragraph. I posted it to my Instagram feed and my story. I did not tag Lily. I did not tag Diane. I simply captioned it, "The Truth About Today." Link in bio. I sent the link directly to Sarah at Opal Shade with a short note. Sarah, I believe in transparency. Here is the full context, backed by security footage and receipts. Regarding the attempted theft of my property today, I refuse to be blackmailed by family members who are upset that I enforced a legal boundary. Then, I put the phone down. I went to the kitchen and made a sandwich. I forced myself to eat it. When I came back 30 minutes later, the internet had exploded. My blog traffic was so high the page was loading slowly. The comments on my Instagram post had surpassed 500, but they were not the comments Lily was getting. Oh my God. One user wrote, "I watched the video. They were laughing while they robbed you. I have been the family ATM for 20 years. Another woman commented, "This made me cry. Good for you for calling the police. I wish I had your courage. The audacity to replace your boucle sofa with that trash." Another interior designer commented, "I am shaking with rage for you. The post was going viral, not because of the scandal, but because of the relatability." It seemed I was not the only woman in America who felt like a tenant in her own family. I was tapping into a vein of collective female exhaustion. An hour later, my phone rang. It was Sarah from Opal Shade. I braced myself for the firing. "Catherine," she said. Her voice was different. It was not the cool, corporate tone of the email. It sounded impressed. "I just watched the footage," she said, "and I read the comments. I am so sorry." I said quickly, "I know this is messy. I can withdraw from the campaign if you need me to." "Withdraw?" Sarah asked. "Are you kidding, Catherine? Look at the engagement. People are cheering for you. You are not just a designer anymore. You are a symbol of setting boundaries." I blinked. We do not want to cancel the shoot," she said. "We want to pivot." "Pivot?" I asked. "We want to rename the campaign," she said, the excitement growing in her voice. "Home is not a bank. We focus on the idea that your space is sacred, that your curtains, your furniture, your design, it is about claiming your territory, it is about privacy, it is about peace." I sat back in my chair, stunned. They were not firing me. They were doubling down. "We want to increase the budget," Sarah continued. "We want to do a video interview with you about the concept of sanctuary. This is going to be huge," I agreed, my voice barely a whisper. Meanwhile, the war on Facebook was taking a turn. Lily's post, which had initially garnered sympathy, was now being flooded with screenshots of my blog post. "Lily, did you seriously break into her house?" someone commented. "There is video?" Wait, another user wrote, "You said you were poor, but I swear I saw that brown sofa in your background in a picture from 5 years ago. So you took her brand new stuff and gave her your garbage. That is not a gift. That is a swap meet from hell." Internet sleuths were dissecting Lily's photo. "Those sneakers the kid is wearing," one commenter pointed out. "Those are limited edition Jordans. They cost $200, but you cannot afford a chair." The narrative was crumbling. The poor single mother act did not hold up against the high-definition reality of my security footage. Then came the death blow. I saw a notification from a name I had not seen in years. Jessica Miller. She was a girl I went to high school with. A girl who had stayed in our hometown and knew everyone. She commented directly on Diane's shared post. "Diane, please stop," Jessica wrote. "Everyone in town knows Catherine has been paying Lily's bills for a decade. I worked at the bank when Lily overdrew her account 5 times in 1 month, and I watched Catherine come in and deposit cash to cover it every single time. She paid for your car repairs last winter too. I know because you bragged about it at the salon. Calling her selfish is a joke. It was a breach of bank privacy, technically, but it was the truth. And in the court of public opinion, it was a nuclear bomb." 5 minutes later, Diane's post was gone. 10 minutes later, Lily's post was deleted. The silence that followed was sweeter than any applause I had ever heard. I sat in my office as the sun began to set, casting long, golden shadows across the floor. My phone was still buzzing, but now it was notifications of new followers. My blog subscriber count had jumped by 3,000 people in 2 hours. I looked at the email from Opal Shade again. Home is not a bank. I realized something profound in that moment. For my entire life, I had been terrified of what people would think if I stopped giving. I thought they would see me as cold. I thought they would see me as ungrateful. But the world did not see that. The world saw a woman who had finally stood up. The shame I had been carrying, the heavy, suffocating shame of being the bad daughter, began to evaporate. It was not my shame to carry. It never was. I was not the villain of this story. I was just the protagonist who had finally decided to write her own lines. I closed my laptop. I walked into the living room. I ran my hand along the back of the cream sofa. It felt soft. It felt expensive. It felt mine. For the first time, the house did not feel like a fortress under siege. It felt like a victory lap. The adrenaline from the police intervention had faded, leaving behind a cold, crystalline clarity. I sat at my dining table, the surface of which was finally clear of clutter, and opened my laptop. The house was quiet. For the first time in my life, the silence did not feel empty. It felt strategic. I was done with emotions. Emotions were messy. Emotions allowed my mother to manipulate me with tears and my sister to rob me with a smile. I was a business owner. I dealt in contracts, budgets, and bottom lines. It was time to treat my family like what they truly were, a bad investment that needed to be liquidated. I opened a blank Excel spreadsheet. I typed a header in bold. Size 14 font, family expenses, closed account. Then, I logged into my online banking portal. I set the filter to all transactions, and the date ranged to max. I went back 15 years. I began the excavation. The first entry was dated 14 years ago. Credit card payoff, Lily. It was $1,400. I remembered that day. I remembered Diane crying on the phone, telling me that Lily was just a child who had made a mistake with a department store card, and if I did not help, her credit would be ruined before she turned 20. I typed it into the spreadsheet. Row 1, date October 14th, 2009, amount $1,400. Note, Lily's mistake. I kept scrolling. $1,800 for a transmission repair on a car Lily crashed 3 months later. $3,200 for legal fees when Lily got caught shoplifting and needed a lawyer to keep it off her record. $5,000 for a medical emergency that Diane never fully explained, but which coincided perfectly with Lily posting photos from a music festival in California. I entered every single line item. The cursor blinked, a steady, rhythmic heartbeat of my financial exploitation. Then came the monthly drains, the subsidy for my nephews. When Noah was born, Diane had told me that it was my duty as the successful aunt to ensure the boys did not suffer for their mother's lack of ambition. Just a little help, she had said, for diapers and formula. That little help had solidified into a standing transfer of $700 a month. I ran the calculation. $700 multiplied by 48 months. $33,600. I stared at the number. $33,000. That was a down payment. That was a year of travel. That was a safety net. I had poured that money into a black hole. And what did I have to show for it? 2 nephews who were being taught to jump on my furniture and scream when they did not get their way. I kept digging. I found the receipt for the laptop I had bought Lily 2 years ago. She had claimed she wanted to take online courses to become a paralegal. She needed a high-performance machine. She said, I spent $1,200 on a MacBook. A week later, I had seen a photo of it on her kitchen counter, covered in stickers, running a high-end video game while she ignored it. She never took a single class. I added the car insurance premiums I'd been paying for Diane since I was 25. I added the roof repair bill for Lily's bungalow, $3,500, because she didn't have the cash flow when the leak started. I summed the column. The final number appeared in the bottom right cell. I blinked, thinking I had made a formula error. I double-checked the range. The formula was correct. $82,415. I sat back in my chair, the breath leaving my lungs in a slow hiss. $82,000. That was not just money. That was my life. That was hours of overtime. That was skipped vacations. That was eating instant noodles while my peers went out to dinner. That was the anxiety that woke me up at 3 in the morning. I had effectively been paying a second mortgage for 15 years, but the house belonged to someone who hated me. I did not cry. The time for crying was over. I opened a new document. I used my official canvas and key design letterhead. I wanted this to look professional. I wanted it to look cold. I pasted the spreadsheet into the body of the document, to Diane and Lily. I wrote, Please find attached a comprehensive summary of the financial assistance provided to you over the last 15 years. This includes direct cash transfers, bill payments, legal fees, and emergency loans. Total value: $82,415. I bolded the number. I am not requesting repayment. I continued. I know you do not have it. Consider this a final receipt. This document serves as notification that the Catherine Bank is officially and permanently closed. Do not ask for a loan. Do not ask for a cosigner. Do not ask for $20 for gas. The answer is no. The balance is zero. Regards, Catherine Parker. I added my father, Robert, to the recipient list. He needed to see the price tag of his silence. I hit send. The swoosh sound of the email leaving my outbox was the most satisfying sound I had heard in years. But I was not done. I picked up my phone. I dialed the locksmith I used for my business. It was 8 in the evening, but I paid the after-hours premium without hesitation. When he arrived, I had him change every single lock on the house: the front door, the back door, the side garage door. I watched him hand me the new keys, heavy, brass, and singular. The spare key that Diane had waved at my security camera was now just a useless piece of metal. While the locksmith worked, I logged into my cell phone provider's website. For years, I had kept Diane and Robert on my family plan. It was a small thing, $100 a month, but it was a tether. I clicked Remove Line. A warning popped up. This will immediately suspend service for this number unless transferred to a new account. I clicked Confirm. Let them pay their own bill. Let them feel the weight of their own communication. Then, I did what any responsible person does when they have been compromised. I pulled my credit reports. I wanted to make sure there were no other surprises, no other family helps family entanglements I had forgotten about. I logged into the Credit Monitoring Bureau. I scanned the list of open accounts. Mortgage, correct. Car loan, correct. Business credit card, correct. Personal visa, correct. I stopped. At the bottom of the list, there was an entry I did not recognize. Lux Living Furniture Store credit card, opened 3 months ago. Balance: $4,200. Status past due. My blood ran cold. I had never shopped at Lux Living. It was a tacky, overpriced chain store that sold gold-plated mirrors and velvet thrones. I would never set foot in there, let alone open a line of credit. I clicked on the details. The billing address was listed as 142 Maple Street. That was Lily's address. I sat there, staring at the screen, and the pieces clicked together. 3 months ago, I had left my purse at my parents' house during a Sunday dinner. I remembered coming back into the room and seeing Lily standing near it. She must have taken a photo of my driver's license and my social security card. She had opened a credit card in my name, maxed it out on furniture for her own house, probably the very things she was trying to replace with my stolen boucle sofa, and then stopped paying the bill. She was not just a leech, she was a criminal. This was identity theft. This was federal fraud. A part of me, the old Catherine, wanted to drive over there and scream at her. I wanted to shake her and ask her how she could do this to me. But the new Catherine, the one who had just seen an $82,000 deficit, knew better. Confrontation was what they wanted. Drama was their fuel. If I went over there, they would cry. They would blame stress. They would promise to pay it back, and nothing would change. I picked up my phone. I did not call Lily. I called the fraud department of the credit card issuer. "Thank you for calling the fraud protection line," the automated voice said. When a representative came on the line, my voice was steady. "My name is Catherine Parker. I am looking at my credit report, and I see a card I did not open. I would like to report identity theft." The representative asked the standard questions. "Do you know who might have opened this?" Usually, people hesitate here. They protect their family. I did not hesitate. "Yes," I said. "The card is registered to the address of my sister, Lily Parker. I have reason to believe she used my information without my consent." I told them everything. I told them about the theft earlier that day. I offered to send them the police report number from the grand larceny incident to establish a pattern of criminal behavior. I offered to send the Safe Nest video to prove that these people had no respect for my property or rights. The representative sounded stunned but efficient. "We will open an investigation immediately. Ms. Parker," he said, "we are freezing the account. We will send a fraud packet to the address on file, your sister's address, requiring verification of identity. If she cannot provide it, the debt will be removed from your name, and our legal team will take over." Take over meant they would go after her, not me. The bank. I hung up. I sat in the silence of my living room. Outside, the wind was picking up, rustling the leaves of the oak tree. 20 minutes later, my phone lit up. It was Lily. Then it was Diane. Then Lily again. Then a text message from Lily. "What did you do? Why did I get an email from the credit card company?" "Catherine, answer me." She must have had alerts set up on the account. She knew the freeze had hit. She knew the walls were closing in. I did not read the rest of the messages. I did not reply. I went into my settings. I selected block contact for Lily. I selected block contact for Diane. I hesitated on my father's name. Then, I remembered him sitting in that armchair, watching television while my furniture was jammed into the corner. It is just stuff. Catherine, I blocked him too. I was not sending a hitman. I was not sending a demolition crew. I was simply letting the consequences of their own actions arrive at their doorstep, unmitigated by my wallet. I walked to the front door and locked the new deadbolt. The click was heavy and solid. $82,000. I would never get that money back. I knew that. But as I turned off the lights and walked up the stairs to my reclaimed bedroom, I realized I had purchased something far more valuable. I had purchased my freedom, and the receipt was in the mail. The days following the police intervention and the subsequent shutting down of the Bank of Catherine were a study in sociological chaos. My extended family, a sprawling network of cousins, second cousins, and great aunts, who usually only communicated during weddings and funerals, suddenly had very strong opinions about my living room furniture. My phone became a grenade I was afraid to touch. I stopped answering calls from numbers I did not recognize, but the voicemails piled up. They fell into two distinct camps. The first camp was the enablers. These were the relatives who subscribed to the ancient, toxic doctrine that sharing DNA excuses all manner of sins. "Catherine, this is Aunt Patty." One voicemail droned. I heard about the unpleasantness. "Look, I know Lily can be a handful, and Diane is intense, but you went too far. Calling the police on your baby sister, you have embarrassed us all. You need to drop this lawsuit and apologize. You are the strong one. You can take it." The second camp was the passive-aggressives. "Hey, it is Cousin Mike," a text read. "Just heard you evicted your own mother from your life. That is cold. Cat, even for you. Hope that fancy sofa keeps you warm at night." I deleted them all. I did not engage. I did not explain. I realized that explaining myself to people who were committed to misunderstanding me was a waste of energy. I had $82,000 worth of reasons to stay silent. However, there was one exception. My Aunt Marjorie. Marjorie was Diane's younger sister. But they were polar opposites. Marjorie had left Brookstone 20 years ago to open a bakery in Chicago. She smoked slim cigarettes, wore caftans, and had never asked me for a dime. In fact, she was the only person who had sent me a graduation gift when I finished college, a check for $100 and a note that said, "Get out while you can." She called me 3 days after the blog post went viral. I picked up immediately. "So," Marjorie said, her voice raspy and amused, "I hear you finally nuked the bridge." "I did," I said, leaning back in my office chair. "Good for you," she said. "It is about damn time." Then, she gave me the intelligence report from behind enemy lines. Since I had blocked Diane and Lily, and since Robert was too cowardly to tell me the truth, Marjorie was my only window into the fallout. "Honey, it is absolute carnage over there." Marjorie told me, "I spoke to your father yesterday. He sounds like a ghost haunting his own house." She went on to describe the civil war that had erupted in the bungalow. Without a common enemy me to unite against, Diane and Lily had turned on each other. "Diane is blaming Lily for the credit card fraud," Marjorie said. "She is telling everyone who will listen that she had no idea Lily stole your identity. She claims she just thought you were being generous with the furniture. She is trying to scrub her hands clean. And Lily, I asked. Lily is singing like a canary. Marjorie laughed. She is telling Robert that Diane orchestrated the whole thing. She says Diane told her to take the furniture because Catherine owes us. She says Diane promised to smooth it over with you. Now that the credit card company is involved, Lily is terrified she's going to jail. So she is throwing her mother under the bus to anyone who asks. They are eating each other, I said, staring out the window at my oak tree. Predators always do when the prey escapes. Marjorie said, Keep your door locked, kid, and do not send them a penny, not even for a funeral. I hung up feeling a strange mixture of sadness and validation. For years, they had made me feel like I was the cause of the tension. If Catherine just gave more, if Catherine was just nicer, but I was gone, and the tension was worse than ever. I was not the cause. I was the buffer, and I had removed myself. While my family imploded, my career was experiencing a supernova. The marketing team at Opal Shade decided to lean fully into the narrative. They flew a production crew to my house. We spent 2 days shooting video and stills. They did not hide the fact that this was a home that had been fought for. The campaign launched 2 weeks later. The slogan was plastered across Instagram, Pinterest, and interior design blogs. Home is not a bank. Protect your sanctuary. The main image was a shot of me sitting on the reclaimed cream boucle sofa, looking directly into the camera, holding a cup of tea. I looked calm. I looked unbothered. I looked like a woman who owned her space. The response was overwhelming. My inbox, once filled with client complaints or spam, was now filled with essays from strangers. Women wrote to me about their husbands who gambled away savings, about parents who demanded retirement funds, about siblings who guilt-tripped them into debt. I had accidentally become the poster child for financial boundaries. A popular YouTube channel that focused on personal finance for millennials contacted me. They wanted to interview me for an episode about the family tax. I agreed, on the condition that we did not use my family's real names, though the internet sleuths had already figured out plenty. In the interview, I sat in shadow, just a silhouette, and I broke down the numbers. I walked the host through the spreadsheet, the $1,400 credit card debt, the $700 monthly stipend, the $82,000 total. When I said that number out loud to a third party, the host gasped. $82,000, he asked. That is a retirement fund. That is a college education. You gave that up. I did not give it up. I said into the microphone. It was extracted from me. I paid it as a ransom to be loved. And the punchline is, they never loved me anyway. They just loved the transaction. The video got 2 million views in 4 days. The ripple effect of my refusal to pay was hitting Lily and Diane with the force of a tsunami. Lily, facing a fraud investigation from the credit card issuer and the potential of a police record for the theft, had been forced to make a deal. Marjorie told me that to avoid a lawsuit from the credit card company, Lily had agreed to a strict repayment plan. For the first time in her life, Lily had to get a real job. Not a gig, not a vague online business, but a job. She was working shifts at a call center on the edge of town. Marjorie sent me a text. Saw Lily at the grocery store. She was buying generic brand cereal, and she looked tired. Welcome to adulthood, I guess. She had to sell her car, the one I had helped pay insurance on, and downgrade to something older to make the payments. The Instagram posts of spa days and weekend trips stopped abruptly. Her feed went silent. There were no more best aunt ever captions because the aunt had closed the bank. Diane was faring no better. Without my constant infusions of cash for emergencies, the reality of her financial mismanagement was catching up to her. The house needed repairs she could not afford. Her own medical prescriptions, which I used to pick up as a favor, were now hitting her own wallet. Marjorie told me that Diane had tried to host a family dinner the previous Sunday to rally support, but she could not afford the usual spread of expensive cuts of meat she liked to serve to show off. She served pasta, and she spent the whole meal complaining about how ungrateful children are. Apparently, half the family left early. It is hard to be a matriarch when you cannot buy the loyalty of your subjects. Then there was Robert, my father. He was the only one I did not completely hate. I just pitied him. And sometimes, pity is heavier than hate. He had stopped texting me telling me to fix things. The silence from his end was different. It was not the angry silence of Diane or the petulant silence of Lily. It was a shame-filled silence. One Tuesday evening, while I was reviewing fabric swatches for a new hotel lobby project, my phone rang. It was Robert. I hesitated. My thumb hovered over the decline button. I had blocked him, but I had unblocked him a week ago. Telling myself it was for emergencies only, I answered. "Hello," I said, my voice professional and guarded. "Catherine," he said. His voice sounded rough, like he had been smoking, though he quit 20 years ago. "Is everything okay?" I asked. "Is someone in the hospital?" "No," he said. "Everyone is fine, physically." There was a long pause. I could hear the hum of the refrigerator in the background, the refrigerator I had bought them 5 years ago when the old one died. I wanted to hear your voice," he said. I did not know what to say. He had never called me just to hear my voice. He called to ask for money. He called to tell me Mom was mad. He called to tell me Lily needed help. "I am here. Dad," I said, "I saw your picture in that magazine." He said, "The online one. You look very grown up. You look strong." "I am strong," I said. "I know," he said. And the way he said it, with a crack in the last syllable, made my throat tight. "I know you are. You always were. I think I forgot that being strong doesn't mean you do not hurt." I gripped the phone tighter. This was the closest he had ever come to an apology. "I am sorry I was not there. Catherine," he whispered. "I was sitting right in the chair. But I was not there." I took a breath. I did not offer him absolution. I did not say, "It is okay." "Dad, because it was not okay. I appreciate you saying that." I said. We stayed on the line for another 10 seconds of silence. "I won't keep you," he said. "I know you are busy. You have a big career. Take care of yourself. Katie." He hung up. He called me Katie. He hadn't called me Katie since I was 12. I put the phone down and stared at the wall. I did not cry, but I felt a shifting in my chest. My father was beginning to see me, not as a resource, but as a person, and he was realizing that he had lost access to that person because of his own cowardice. That was a punishment worse than any bill I could send him. The consequences continued to ripple outward, but in ways I had not expected. I walked into a local coffee shop the next morning. The barista, a young woman with blue hair who usually just nodded at me, stopped and looked at me. "Are you Catherine Parker?" she asked. "Yes," I said, bracing myself for a confrontation. She smiled. A genuine, wide smile. "I read your blog post," she said. "My dad stole my student loan money last year. I thought I was the only one. Thank you for writing that." She wrote on the house on my cup. Later that day, a contractor I worked with, a gruff man in his 50s named Dave, who usually treated me with mild condescension, walked onto the job site. He looked at me with new respect. Saw the Opal Shade campaign. He grunted. "Takes guts to stand up to family. My ex-wife cleaned me out. Good for you." "Parker." He shook my hand. A firm grip. From that day on, he never questioned my orders again. The emails continued to pour in. Potential clients were not scared away by the scandal. They were attracted to the strength. "We want a designer who understands value." One inquiry read, "We want someone who knows how to protect an investment." I realized a profound paradox as I sat in my office, watching the sun set over my backyard. For 15 years, I had believed that if I stopped being the ATM, my world would collapse. I thought I would be alone. I thought I would be unlovable. I thought I would be rejected by everyone. But the opposite had happened. By closing the bank, I had opened the world. I had lost a mother who saw me as a wallet and a sister who saw me as a target. But I had gained a community of thousands. I had gained the respect of my peers. I had gained a career that was soaring. And most importantly, I had gained the ability to walk through my own front door without flinching. The price of my freedom had been high $82,000 and a family, but looking around at my peaceful, beautiful life, I knew one thing for sure. It was a bargain. It was raining when he came. It was not a dramatic, storm-swept downpour, but a steady gray drizzle that slicked the streets of Brookstone and made the world feel small and enclosed. I was in my kitchen, organizing my spice rack, a mundane task that I found incredibly soothing when the doorbell rang. My stomach tightened instantly. I was not expecting a package. I was not expecting a friend. In the last few weeks, a ring at the doorbell usually meant trouble. I walked to the door, my socks sliding silently on the hardwood floors. I pressed my eye to the peephole. Standing on my porch, unprotected from the rain, was my father. Robert. He was alone. There was no Diane looming over his shoulder with a scowl. There was no Lily looking for an angle. It was just him, wearing a beige windbreaker that was darker at the shoulders from the wetness. His hands were empty. He looked at the door, then looked down at his feet, then looked back at the door. He looked like a man waiting for permission to exist. I hesitated. My hand hovered over the deadbolt, the new deadbolt I had installed specifically to keep people like him out. I had blocked his number. I had blocked his emails. I had sent him an invoice for $82,000, effectively telling him that our relationship was a failed business transaction. But he was my father, and seeing him standing there, shivering slightly, triggered a reflex I had not fully extinguished. I unlocked the door and pulled it open. He looked up, startled, as if he had expected me to leave him there. "Catherine," he said. His voice was rough. "Come in." I said. I did not step back to hug him. I stood aside, creating just enough space for him to pass. He stepped into the foyer, dripping water onto the mat. He looked around the living room nervously, his eyes landing on the cream boucle sofa. The last time he was in this room, that sofa had been missing, replaced by a piece of garbage, while his wife and daughter screamed at me. It was the scene of the crime. He walked over to it slowly. "Can I?" he asked, gesturing to the sofa. I nodded. "It is just a couch, Dad." He sat down on the edge of the cushion, keeping his wet coat pulled tight around him so it would not touch the fabric. He hunched his shoulders. I realized with a start how small he looked. In my memories of childhood, my father was a looming figure of silence. He was the wall I could never scale. Now, sitting in my sanctuary, he looked like an old man who had lost his way. I stood by the fireplace, keeping my distance. I crossed my arms. "Where is Mom?" I asked. "Home," he said, "or what is left of it." He rubbed his hands together. They were shaking slightly. "I did not come here to ask you to forgive her, Catherine," he said. "I want you to know that I did not come here to tell you that Lily is sorry, because she is not. She is just scared of the bank." He looked up at me. His eyes were red-rimmed. "I came because I woke up this morning and I realized I could not look at myself in the mirror anymore." I stayed silent. I let the words hang in the air between us. "I read the invoice," he said softly. I felt a flicker of surprise. I had assumed Diane would have deleted the email or torn up the printout before he ever saw it. I read every single line. He continued. "The credit card payoff from 2009, the monthly transfers for the boys, the laptop, the roof repair." He shook his head slowly. $82,000. "It is a lot of money," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "It is not just the money," Robert said. "It is the years." I sat there with my coffee, reading that list, and I remembered every single one of those days. I remembered when Lily crashed the car. I remembered when she wanted the laptop. I remembered Diane telling you that you had to help because you were the big sister. He looked down at his hands. I was there. "Catherine, I was sitting right there in the chair. I heard them ask you. I heard you say you were broke. I heard them push you until you gave in. And I said nothing." He took a shaky breath. "I told myself I was keeping the peace," he said. "I told myself that as long as the shouting stopped, everything was fine. But it wasn't fine. I was watching them eat you alive, and I handed them the knife and fork. I felt a lump form in my throat, I swallowed it down. This was the validation I had craved for 15 years. But hearing it now, it didn't fix the past. It just highlighted the waste. Why now, I asked. Why today? Because of what happened yesterday, he said. He unzipped his jacket slightly. Your mother was pacing the kitchen, he said. She was screaming about you. She called you a traitor. She called you a cold-hearted snake. She said she gave birth to a monster. And Lily was crying, saying it was my fault for not making you pay her debts because I am the head of the household. He let out a dry, humorless laugh. Head of the household, that is a joke. He looked me in the eye. I snapped. Catherine. For the first time in 30 years, I snapped. I slammed my hand on the table and I told them to shut up. I told them, enough. She does not owe us anything. She has paid for this family for a decade. If we are drowning, it is because we refuse to learn how to swim. My eyes widened. I tried to picture my passive, silent father yelling at Diane Parker. It seemed impossible. Diane went crazy. He said, she told me to get out if I was going to side with the enemy. So I moved my things into the guest room. I have been sleeping there for 2 nights. I am thinking about calling Uncle Jerry and asking if I can stay at his place for a while. He looked around my living room again. I cannot stay in that house anymore. Catherine, the air is poisonous, and I realized that if I stayed silent one more day, I would be just as poisonous as they are. I listened to him. I watched the rainwater drip from his cuff onto my rug. I felt a strange mixture of pity and anger. I walked over and sat on the coffee table, facing him. I have a question. Dad, I said, and I need the truth. Anything. He said, are you here apologizing because you actually see me, I asked? Or are you here because you cannot stand the feeling of your own guilt, and you want me to absolve you so you can sleep at night? He flinched. It was a sharp question, but necessary. I needed to know if this was about my pain or his comfort. He looked at me for a long time. He did not try to dodge. It is both, he admitted quietly. He slumped back against the sofa cushions. I am selfish. Catherine, I have always been a weak man. I hate the way I feel right now. I hate knowing that I failed you. So yes, part of me wants you to tell me it is okay so the pit in my stomach goes away. He paused. But the other part, the bigger part, is that I looked at that spreadsheet, and I realized I do not know my own daughter. I know the ATM. I know the peacekeeper. But I do not know the woman who built this business. I do not know the woman who had the courage to call the police on her own mother. And I realize that if I do not fix this, I am going to die without ever knowing her. He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. If you tell me to leave, I will leave. If you never want to see me again, I understand. I deserve that. But I had to come here and tell you that you were right. You were right about everything. I looked at him. I saw the wrinkles on his forehead, the gray in his stubble. He was a man who had spent his life hiding, and he had finally stepped out into the light, blinking and terrified. I took a deep breath. I am not going to forgive you today. Dad, I said. He nodded. I know. 15 years is a long time to ignore someone, I said. You cannot fix that with one rainy afternoon and a confession. I know, he repeated. But, I said, holding up a hand, I am willing to try. But I have conditions. Name them, he said immediately. 1, I said, ticking off my finger. No money. I do not give you money. You do not ask for money. If you move out and need rent, you figure it out. If Mom needs money, you do not call me. The bank is closed. Done, he said. 2, I continued. No relaying information. I do not want to hear about Diane's blood pressure. I do not want to hear about Lily's job at the call center. And I certainly do not want you telling them about my life. You are not a double agent. If you are here as my father, not their messenger. Understood, he said. 3, I said, if Diane ever wants to see me again, and that is a big if she has to come herself, she has to knock on that door. And she has to say the words, I am sorry, without adding but or crying about how hard her labor was. Until then, she does not exist in this house. Robert nodded slowly. I do not think she is capable of that. Catherine, then she stays away, I said firmly. He looked at me. There was a new expression in his eyes. It was not just regret, it was respect. You are tough, he said. I had to be, I replied. You guys made me that way. He let out a sigh that seemed to deflate his entire body. He stood up. I accept your conditions. Catherine, all of them. He buttoned his windbreaker. I should go. I do not want to overstay. He walked toward the door. I followed him. When his hand was on the knob, he stopped and turned back to me. There is one thing, he said. I stiffened. Here it comes. I thought, the ask, the favor. I have a little money saved up, he said, in a separate account that your mother does not have access to. It is not much, maybe $2,000. I frowned. I told you, Dad. No money. No, he said quickly. I mean, I want to buy you something. He gestured toward the sliding glass doors at the back of the living room, which looked out onto my rain-soaked backyard. I saw that your patio is empty, he said. I was driving past that garden center on Route 9 yesterday. They have these nice teak tables, small ones. And I know you like Japanese maples. He looked at me with a tentative hopefulness. I want to buy you a table and a tree for the yard, just so I can contribute something to this house that isn't pain. I stared at him. A teak table, a tree. He had noticed the empty patio. He knew I liked Japanese maples. It was such a small, mundane gesture. But after 15 years of give me, give me, give me, the offer to give felt seismic. I felt the ice in my chest crack. Just a fraction. A Japanese maple would be nice, I said softly. He smiled. It was a weak, watery smile, but it was real. Okay, he said. I will bring it by next weekend. I will leave it on the porch if you are not home. He opened the door. The rain was still falling, a steady drumbeat against the roof. He stepped out, then paused again. He turned back, his hand resting on the doorframe. Catherine, he said, there is something else. What I asked. He lowered his voice, glancing at the street as if he expected Diane to be hiding in the bushes. It is about your grandmother. Eleanor. I frowned. Grandma Eleanor had died 5 years ago. What about her, I asked. The house went to Lily. The money went to Lily. We all know that. Robert shifted his weight uncomfortably. Your mother never told you the whole story. He said, and I let her hide it because it was easier. He took a breath. About 2 months before she died, Eleanor called a lawyer, a new lawyer, not the family friend Diane always used. My heart skipped a beat. Why? She was angry, Robert said. She saw how Diane was treating you. She saw how Lily was turning out. She told me once that she was watching you pay for everyone's mistakes, and she hated it. He looked me in the eye. She changed her will. Catherine. I stared at him. The sound of the rain seemed to fade away, replaced by a rushing sound in my ears. What do you mean? I asked. Diane showed me the will. It said everything went to the daughter who needed it most. It named Lily specifically. That was the old will. Robert said, the one Diane had in the safe, the one she read to us. He leaned in closer. The new lawyer called the house yesterday. He was trying to reach you, but Diane hung up on him. He called back today on my cell phone. He said he has been trying to execute the estate for years, but there were complications, and Diane was blocking him. But now that the police report is filed, and the family is legally fractured, he said he is moving forward. I gripped the doorframe. What does the new will say? Dad, I do not know the details, Robert said, but he said that the house Lily is living in, it might not be Lily's house anymore, and there was a portfolio, stocks, bonds. Eleanor was frugal. Catherine, she had money she never touched. He zipped his jacket all the way up. Expect a call from a firm called Henderson and Cole. And when they call, answer it. He stepped off the porch into the rain. I stood there, frozen. Dad, I called out. He stopped and turned. Rainwater was dripping from his nose. Why tell me this now? I asked. You kept this secret for 5 years. He looked at me, and for the first time, He looked like a father. "Because you stopped being the bank," he said, "and it is time you got paid what you are owed." He turned and walked to his car. I watched him drive away, his taillights fading into the mist. I closed the door and locked it. I leaned my back against the wood, my heart hammering against my ribs. I had thought the war was over. I thought I had walked away from the rubble with nothing but my freedom. But it seemed that Grandma Eleanor had buried a landmine in the garden, and it was about to explode. The call came on a Tuesday morning, slicing through the quiet hum of my office. It was a woman's voice, crisp and professional, identifying herself as a paralegal from Henderson and Cole. She asked if I could come in at 2 o'clock that afternoon for the reading of the last will and testament of Eleanor Vance. My first instinct was to say no. I wanted to tell her that I had severed ties with that branch of the family tree, that whatever crumbs were left on the table could be fought over by the vultures without my participation. But then I remembered my father standing on my porch in the rain, water dripping from his nose, telling me about the secret portfolio. She changed her will. Catherine. I realized that refusing to go would not be an act of strength. It would be an act of avoidance. Strength was walking into a room full of people who hated you and not flinching. "I'll be there," I said. I arrived at the law firm 10 minutes early. It was a serious building downtown, all glass and steel, far removed from the strip mall lawyer Diane usually employed. When I walked into the conference room, they were already there. Diane was sitting at the head of the mahogany table, her posture rigid. She wore a black dress that I recognized as one I had bought her for Mother's Day 3 years ago. She did not look at me. She stared straight ahead at the empty leather chair where the lawyer would sit. Her jaw set in a tight line. Lily sat to her right. She looked nervous, her leg bouncing under the table. When I entered, she glanced at me, then quickly looked away, whispering something to Diane. Diane just shook her head sharply. Robert sat at the far end of the table. He looked tired, but when he saw me, he gave a nearly imperceptible nod. It was the only acknowledgement of my existence in the room. I pulled out the chair opposite them. I placed my purse on the table. I folded my hands. I did not say hello. The silence in the room was thick enough to choke on. Diane broke it first, though she did not address me directly. She spoke to the air. "I do not know why we have to do this," she said, her voice shrill. "Mother made her wishes clear years ago. The house goes to Lily because she has the children. The rest is split. This is just a waste of billable hours." Lily laughed, a nervous, tittering sound. "Yeah," she said, "it is probably just paperwork to legalize the deed transfer. Grandma's house is already in my name, practically. They were trying to convince themselves. They were building a reality out of words because the silence terrified them." The door opened and a man walked in. He was in his 60s, wearing a gray suit that cost more than Lily's car. He carried a thick file folder. "Good afternoon," he said. "I am Mr. Henderson. I was Eleanor Vance's personal attorney for the last 5 years of her life." He sat down. He did not make small talk. He opened the file. "We are here to execute the final will and testament of Eleanor Vance, dated August 14th, 2019, he said. "This document supersedes all previous wills, including the one drafted in 2010. Diane shifted in her seat. "Supersedes?" she asked. "What does that mean?" "It means the old will is invalid." "Mr. Henderson said calmly. He began to read. The legalese washed over the room, dry and precise. Then, he got to the assets. Item 1. He read, "Regarding the property located at 142 Maple Street." Lily sat up straighter. "That is my house," she whispered. "The deceased acknowledges that this property was transferred to the possession of her granddaughter, Lily Parker, during her lifetime." He continued, "However, the deceased stipulates that the fair market value of this property at the time of transfer, along with the cost of all major repairs paid for by the estate prior to her death, constitutes the entirety of Lily Parker's inheritance." Lily blinked. "Wait, what? Therefore—" "Mr. Henderson said, not looking up, "Lily Parker receives no further distribution from the estate. The house is her portion, paid in full, But, Lily stammered, but what about the cash Grandma had savings? She promised to help with the boys. Mr. Henderson ignored her. He turned a page. Item 2. He read, regarding the distribution of liquid assets to her daughter, Diane Parker. Diane smoothed her dress, a smug look returning to her face. Finally, the deceased has attached an addendum listing all financial gifts, loans, and bailouts provided to Diane Parker over the last 20 years. Mr. Henderson said. He lifted a sheet of paper. This list includes the down payment on the Parker family home, 3 vehicle purchases, and various personal loans. The total value of these inter vivos gifts exceeds $150,000. Diane's face went pale. That was help, she sputtered. That wasn't an advance on my inheritance. She was my mother. The will states that these funds were an early distribution of assets. Mr. Henderson said. Therefore, the estate considers Diane Parker's portion to be satisfied in full. She receives $0 from the remaining estate. The room went dead silent. The only sound was the hum of the air conditioning. Diane looked like she had been slapped. Lily looked like she was about to vomit. Then where is the money? Diane hissed. Mom had a savings account. She had that investment portfolio from Dad's pension. Who gets that? Mr. Henderson turned his gaze toward me. Item 3. He read, the residue of the estate, including the Vanguard investment portfolio, the savings account at Citizens Bank, and the contents of her personal safe deposit box, is bequeathed to her granddaughter, Catherine Parker. I felt the air leave my lungs. I kept my face impassive, but under the table, my hands gripped my knees. Diane stood up. Her chair scraped violently against the floor. You are joking, she screamed. She gave it to her. To the one who never visited, to the one who ignored her, I took care of her. I drove her to her appointments. Henderson held up a hand. Mrs. Parker, please sit down, he said. The deceased anticipated this reaction. She included a statement of intent. He looked at the document. I leave these assets to Catherine. He read, Eleanor's voice echoing through his words. Because she is the only member of this family who understands the value of $1. She is the only one who has never asked me for anything. I have watched her support her mother and sister for a decade, and I will not allow my death to fund their continued dependency. Catherine earns her life. Now, she can own it. Diane collapsed back into her chair. She looked defeated, small, and suddenly very old. How much? Lily asked, her voice trembling. How much is it, Mr. Henderson looked at the file. The current value of the portfolio and savings is approximately $420,000, he said. $420,000. The number hung in the air. It was life-changing money. It was the freedom I had been buying in installments for 15 years, finally delivered in a lump sum. But there is a condition. Mr. Henderson added. I tensed. Here it comes. Catherine is appointed as the sole trustee of an educational trust to be established for her great-nephews, Noah and Caleb, in the amount of $50,000 each, he said. Lily let out a breath of relief. Oh, thank God. Okay, so the boys get money. Mr. Henderson looked at Lily over his glasses. The funds are to be managed exclusively by Catherine Parker. He said, no funds are to be released to the parents. Payments must be made directly to educational institutions, medical providers, or vendors. If Catherine Parker determines that the parents are attempting to access these funds for personal use, she has the full legal authority to dissolve the trust and donate the remainder to charity. Lily's face crumpled. She stared at me. You, she whispered, you control my kids' money, I control the trust. Lily, I said, speaking for the first time, the money belongs to the boys, not you. This is insane, Diane shouted. She will never give us a dime. She hates us. She called the police on us. Mr. Henderson closed the folder. The will is valid, notarized, and incontestable, he said, unless you have proof of coercion or lack of capacity, which you do not. As Mrs. Vance was examined by a psychiatrist on the day of signing, this matter is closed. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a sealed envelope. It was thick, made of heavy cream paper. He slid it across the polished table toward me. "Catherine," he said, "your grandmother left this personal letter for you. She instructed that I give it to you only after the will was read." I reached out and took the envelope. It felt heavy in my hand. Lily turned to me. Tears were streaming down her face, ruining her mascara. She switched tactics instantly. The anger vanished, replaced by the wheedling, pathetic tone she had used since we were children. "Kate," she sobbed, "please, you cannot keep all of it. $400,000. That is too much for one person. You have a business. You have that big house. The boys need things. I have debts. The credit card company is garnishing my wages." She reached across the table. Trying to grab my hand, I pulled it back. "Just split it with me," she begged. "Give me half. I will pay you back. I swear, I will pay you back just like you used to help me. We are sisters." I looked at her. I looked at the desperation in her eyes. The same desperation that had drained my bank account for 15 years. I stood up. I picked up my purse and the envelope. "Lily," I said, my voice steady and calm. "You got a house, a free house. Do you know how long it took me to save for my down payment?" I gestured to the room. "You got 15 years of my labor. You got clothes, cars, laptops, and bail money. You and Mom drained me until I was dry. This money," I tapped the folder on the table. "This is not your money being taken away. This is the back pay I am owed for being the only adult in this family. This is the refund for a childhood I never got to have because I was too busy being your safety net." I looked at Diane. She was staring at me with pure hatred. "You are ungrateful," Diane spat. "You are a cruel, cold-hearted bitch." "Maybe," I said, "but I am a solvent one." I turned to the lawyer. "Mr. Henderson, I accept the executorship. I will set up the trust for the boys. But please make it clear to my family that if they contact me about money, if they try to guilt-trip me, or if they show up at my house, I will consider it harassment, and I will file a restraining order." Mr. Henderson nodded. "I will handle the communications. Ms. Parker," I turned to leave. "I will tell everyone," Lily screamed after me. "I will tell the whole family what you did. I will tell them you stole Grandma's money." I stopped at the door. I looked back at them, a tableau of misery and entitlement. They already saw the video. "Lily," I said, "they already know who you are. And even if they didn't, I honestly do not care anymore. I have nothing left for you to take." I walked out of the conference room. I heard Diane start to scream at Robert as the door closed, blaming him. But I did not stop. I walked through the lobby, out the glass doors, and into the sunlight. I sat in my car for a long time before I started the engine. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the release of a tension I had carried for decades. I opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of stationery, covered in my grandmother's spidery, elegant handwriting. "My dearest Catherine," it read, "if you are holding this letter, it means I am gone, and the storm has finally broken. I am sorry I was not strong enough to stop it while I was alive. I watched your mother take from you, and I said nothing because I did not want to lose her love. That was my sin. I saw you, Catherine. I saw you working double shifts. I saw you driving that old car so Lily could have a new one. I saw you fading away. This money is not a gift. It is an apology. It is my way of doing what I should have done years ago, cutting the cord. If you are reading this, it means you have finally crossed the threshold I never dared to cross with your mother. You have learned to say no to your own blood. Do not feel guilty. Do not look back. Go build a beautiful life. You have already paid for it. Love, Grandma Eleanor." I cried then. I sat in the parking lot of the law firm and wept until I was empty. I cried for the little girl who gave up her prom dress. I cried for the woman who ate ramen to pay her sister's credit card bill. And I cried for my grandmother, who had loved me silently from the sidelines. When I finally drove home, the sun was setting. The sky was a bruised purple and gold. I pulled into my driveway. My house looked different. It looked solid. The Japanese maple my father had promised sat in a pot by the front door, a small, fragile thing, but alive. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The house was quiet. The cream boucle sofa sat in the center of the room, catching the last rays of the sun. The glass table gleamed. The air smelled of sage and lemon, not stale smoke and guilt. I walked to the center of the room. I stood there, feeling the space around me. It was mine. Every board, every nail, every thread. I did not call Diane. I did not call Lily. I did not even call my father. I whispered into the silence, a vow that was more sacred than any prayer I had ever spoken. From today, I said, my voice strong in the empty room, no one takes anything from me without paying the price, even if they call me daughter, even if they call me sister. The bank is closed. I went to the kitchen, poured a glass of wine, and sat on my beautiful, clean sofa. I watched the sun go down, and for the first time in my life, I was not waiting for the other shoe to drop. I was simply home. Thank you so much for listening to my story. It has been a long journey, and I'm so grateful to share it with you. I would love to know where you are tuning in from. So please drop a comment below and let me know which country or city you are listening in. If you enjoyed seeing justice finally served, please make sure to subscribe to the Maya Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and hit that hype button so this story can reach even more people who need to hear that it is okay to say no. Stay strong and protect your sanctuary.